Leadership in business is not just about making decisions. It's about transforming challenges into opportunities and inspiring others along the way. Today's guest is the former CEO of Harmony Gold and one of South Africa's most experienced mining executives to explore leadership lessons from his remarkable journey in the industry. Bernard Swanepoel is a prominent South African mining executive and entrepreneur, best known for his transformative leadership as CEO of Harmony Gold from 1995 to 2007. Known for his direct communication style and bold business approaches, Bernard has remained an influential voice in the mining sector, serving on multiple boards and advocating for innovation in the industry. On today's episode, he shares critical leadership lessons from his journey of transforming organizations, building resilient teams, and navigating the complex challenges of the mining industry. Insights that apply across all sectors facing disruption and change. Absolute honor to have this conversation with you, Bernard. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nola. Nice to be here.
Look, you grew up in a mine town. Your dad was in mining. Was stepping in mining for you somewhat an obvious choice?
Well, it was sort of the only choice.
Sure.
If you grew up in a mining environment, my dad was a blue-collar worker, an artisan on surface. And so we had opportunities, but limited ones.
Sure.
And so when I wanted to study, I needed a bursary. The bursaries that were available was for mining engineering. And so it was a fantastic opportunity,
Sure.
but it wasn't so much my choice as it was what I could get into, yeah.
Look, mining is not necessarily the most attractive industry, particularly for young people, and I can imagine how it was like for you in that time. So when you were about to step in, what is it about the industry that you want to be part of or influence or even change for that matter, knowing what you knew at the time?
So our generation, obviously many generations before you, literally had to step into the opportunities that were available.
Sure.
So yeah, I did okay at school. I was reasonably strong in maths, so I could study engineering.
Sure.
But then it came to, and where could I get funding for engineering? The mining industry had lots of bursaries. Remember those days, you had to be a white boy.
Sure.
To go and study mining engineering. You had to be white and a boy. And so there were more bursaries than candidates. And that's really how I have it. So the part of choosing mining, it's not I chose mining or mining chose me. But once I got to study, obviously I appreciated the opportunity. And then when you start working, I mean, how can you not enjoy working in that environment? It's challenging, it's fulfilling. You work with people. And of course, because of my background as a white mining engineer, I had fantastic opportunities in an environment where the opportunities were reserved for people like me.
Sure. Look, you held very high positions. Well, you still do hold high and quite influential positions. But you started at the bottom. You started at the very bottom. Maybe talk to us about that part of your journey and perhaps some of the key lessons you learned in that part that you sort of had to even find useful in your higher positions you held later.
I so wish everybody could really, truly start at the bottom of the industry, especially if they plan to be in a leadership position.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had to learn how to speak Fanagalo.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's not a language that is respected, but that was the basic means of communication.
Yeah.
I actually had to work shifts, I had to obtain my blasting license, of course. And all of that stood me in good stead because you know what happened? You come out of varsity, very clever, full of yourself, I know everything. Then you get into a team where nobody speaks English, including me, and through that convoluted language, Fanagalo, you have to communicate, and you quickly find out the guys who've been there for 20 years, 25 years are the true experts.
Absolutely.
So how can that not form your leadership style? So you're not the expert. You may have the degree, but other people have the real experience. So I've enjoyed that. I've learned from people that in terms of corporate hierarchy were levels below me, in terms of remuneration, got a fraction of what I earn. And that truly is always the case in mining. There is no one clever clock. There's no Elon Musk who knows everything. Well, hopefully nobody thinks they do like he does. No?
Yeah. Look, you are known a lot for the transformation of Harmony Gold from a small operation to a really major one. I mean, largest producer at some point or competitively in the world. And to put that in perspective, when you stepped into that role, it was, market capital of about 1.5 billion. And the time you left 12 years later, it was about 34 billion. That is a reflection of your leadership. What would you say enabled you to achieve that?
Well, obviously, even if you're the captain of the winning Springboks, I think you acknowledge that there's a team and a broader group. So that's obviously true of Harmony. So I had the privilege of working with phenomenal people. Yeah. And most of them I found there when I joined the company. At the time, the times were tough and the company wasn't doing well, and they decided to close down with dignity.
Yeah.
Now that's not a very compelling, that doesn't get people up in the morning, yippee, I'm going to work, to close down with dignity. So obviously just reformulating where the company could go, what we could do, that came with some harsh decisions. There was a time when Harmony was probably the most significant retrencher of people in order to survive. Out of all of that came some really smart practical mining practices, how we dealt with the ore body, what we did to the cost structure. The thing I'm the most proud of my time at Harmony was how many of the people who were there at the time went on and ran other companies.
Sure.
And sometimes acknowledging that joint time at Harmony influenced them. Of course, Harmony, because it was in gold mining, it was first and foremost exposed to what does the gold price do. So a lot of that success was in times when the gold price went up. Right now, Harmony again is flying very high, 20 years after I've left, and the gold price is phenomenal. And some would say Harmony truly came into what it was always going to be, the last major gold mining company in South Africa. And some of the people that worked there were probably there before I even joined.
Sure. But I look back as well, even before you stepped into Harmony, I think at 33, you were GM of Beatrix. And when you transformed the organization to become a low-cost producer, this is just a bit of a trend in how you lead. And there's a lot of boldness and decisiveness that I would say comes through from that. What's the golden thread in how you do things?
I think the golden thread is young people got given big opportunities.
Absolutely.
And I wish we could do that again. Truly. I say that as an older person. Now times are different. The governance environment is different. The challenges are different. But in those days, if you were the GM of a mine, you were really almost like a CEO of a full operating entity. If you were young, well, hopefully you knew enough of what not to do, but we made some spectacular mistakes, my generation. But hopefully you were bold enough to try new things, out of necessity sometimes. And there was a context to that. At the time when I came out of my national service, Army, as a young graduate, the National Union of Mine Workers under now President Ramaphosa just won their first court case. They got legally allowed to organize on the mines at the infamous Marievale. Marievale was a section of Grootvlei where I happened to be a graduate. So from my first day back, I engaged with the unions. And not second tier, third tier, the actual national leadership of the union. Now, a generation of managers who could not handle this change left. They created vacancies. There were more opportunities than what there were candidates. Job reservation perfectly advantaged me. I was one of the few people who ticked the boxes. I was white enough, I was male enough, or whatever. And therefore, we got sucked up into senior jobs. In our late 20s, we were operational leaders. In our early 30s, we were general managers of mines and CEOs of companies. And, I don't think I was special and or unique, but I think it was a set of circumstances that I sometimes wish we could recreate for young people today. Yeah.
Look, talking about challenges, I think the industry is constantly at the crossroad of making tough decisions that could heavily impact the industry. You spoke about your time, the time of the unions, and I think as well you had to incorporate a lot of safety systems to improve safety performance. And you look at the leadership now, they are faced with calls to green energy, community engagements, just energy transition, you name it. At your time, how did you sift through the noise in critical decision-making times to ensure that you are clear-minded when you make decisions and you somewhat don't compromise the future?
So a tool that I have used all my life is paint a picture of the future that you want. Paint it clearly. Test it on yourself, verbalize it. What do you think this company or your team should look like 3 years out? Why do you do that? Well, partly that energizes you, but then partly you can go and stand in that future and look back to today's noise and say, you know what, this is noise, this is critical. It's a gimmick, but it works extremely well. To give you an example, I mean, when I got to Harmony, there was no black economic empowerment legislation. But how could you go through 1994 without thinking that black people need to be incorporated into the economy? That companies' boards need to reflect the demographics of the country. So if you went in 1994 and you say, what is this going to look like 3 years out? In 3 years out, people are no longer going to accept whiteboards, they're not going no longer going to tolerate this conversation. So you then come back to 1994 and you say, why don't we do this? Why don't we bring black women onto the board? Why don't we have a black a board reflective of the country with more women, more black people? I mean, it's obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's more obvious if you go and stand in the future, you look back, now you have the advantage, the benefit of hindsight. Yeah. You create your own hindsight. Now, if you talk about green, if we talk about ESG, if we talk about safety, if we talk about inclusion, all those swear words that Donald Trump doesn't like. I mean, the common sense things that we need to do. And you take a view, in 3 years from now, what will society expect of us? Why am I not busy with it now? Suddenly a lot of noise disappears. Huh?
Look, big operations come with big challenges. You've led small, you've led big, you've led small to big. And you see a lot of big operations currently being challenged. Cost-wise, people, planets, I mean, holistically. What would you say are the biggest challenges of big operations, and what should leaders in those spaces be focusing on to sort of, steer the ship in the right direction?
I think your previous question almost goes to the core of it, is what is really important, There are so many things. Now, I mean, and a big organization gets attacked, gets pulled, stakeholders want more of this, more of that. And in the end, let's respect sustainability first and foremost is positive cash flow. So how do you run a business so that there is money in order to sustain, pay salaries, and then start to address? So one must never completely lose sight of underlying, no cash flow, no business. First step towards sustainability. But then you cannot take all of that money and just pay it out as dividends or pay it out as executive remuneration. Then you can start to balance all these sort of other things. I do think the strong lobbying for every new thing must be a new department, must be a new team. It actually makes it very difficult. I mean, can you imagine every time somebody came up with a new idea, you add a player to your rugby team? We would now have had a rugby team of 317 people and counting, with hierarchies of supervision. So we've gone a bit mad. I think the demands on the business needs to be distilled into what is truly, truly important. And listen, I put stakeholders as a very important grouping. Shareholders have got the freedom to leave. I'm not anti-shareholders, but a shareholder is there until he decides or she decides not to be there. The community is there forever. As a mining company, you're in a country. You impact on the natural resource of the people of a country forever. So there are hierarchies of stakeholders. And because I'm no longer getting paid by shareholders, I can say, and I don't think shareholders automatically sit at the top. Because ultimately, when they're not happy, they leave. If I really irritate you as your neighbor, in my mind, it's not fair to expect you to leave now.
Sure. Leading in our industry, Bernard, I mean, people are at the heart of it. I mean, you can be all technical you want. And I've actually heard you once say that this leadership world is a bit democratic. People don't have to follow you. They can work for you, but they don't have to follow you. How did you integrate your technical acumen with your people skills to ensure that you lead people quite well? How did you integrate the two?
Listen, it helps to be a mining engineer in the mining industry.
Sure.
People sort of assumes, aha, he or she brings it, you know.
Yeah.
The fact is we actually have to almost unlearn a lot. Well, first you have to learn, if you are the smartest mining engineer in the room, then what are you doing?
Yeah.
Where are the really smart people, you know? They should be there now. And so at some stage, your technical skills cannot, it is what get us there.
Sure.
I mean, it was my technical skills that got me to senior positions, and then I had to let go of that and accept that somebody else brings more mining engineering. I've got a BCom honors. Somebody else brings more financial skills, you know. And then it's down to your leadership skills. You know? How do you get people to collaborate? How do you paint a clear picture of the future? How do you get everybody to understand what is in it for them? How do you help 30,000 people in a company to all understand what you're talking about? I mean, one of many moments where I thought, oh wow, I need to change dramatically. I would represent Harmony at New Orleans, the biggest gold conference, big venue, standing room only, standing applause at the end for what the people did back in South Africa. When I get back to South Africa, those people were not so happy with the company or how we treated them, or, you know, they were not so clear on the strategy. Now, how can you go out and get recognition for what people do and the people don't know where they fit in? And that started my obsession with, if the guys and the girls at the coalface doesn't know what you're doing, then what you do is not sustainable, you know. And this goes into ESG, this goes into every single thing. If you put out fantastic brochures and reports, and the people in the company see, ooh, new president, suddenly we're not in favor of environmental things anymore. I mean, how can you run a company like that? I mean, your people will never take you serious anymore.
Look, sitting where you sit and observing how we are doing the industry, do you think we've somewhat outsourced our influence as leaders to policies, rules, incentives, and taken a bit of a step back and just allowed those to sort of influence people?
I would say yes, and then I would immediately say, but I fully understand how that happened. Now, and this is the danger of taking a conversation out of context. I mean, 25 years ago, I appointed my board. Now, you will say I did a good job. I would say I did a good job, but there was no process. That no longer works. Well, it works in America. The US has always functioned like that, but our time zone, Europe, South Africa, we've got various governance things, and in that comes, I mean, there was not a single person in my team ever that wasn't there because I wanted him or her to be there. And if they no longer fulfilled the role I saw, I just moved on, you know, got rid of them. Now, you can't quite function like that. It is 25 years later. So a lot of this, like by committee, by consensus, by process, is actually maturity, it's actually good governance. But some of us will always miss the good old days, you know, when it was my way or the highway. So I think my short answer is yes, it is true, but I fully appreciate why we cannot go back to the way perhaps things were many years ago.
Sure. What would you say is a must-have for leaders in the industry, particularly mining?
I would love to use the word passion, love. I mean, I love mining.
Yeah.
I truly do. I love everything about mining. I love mining people. I think we are the most sincere, authentic, in-your-face people. We say what we think. We say it bluntly. We engage with each other. And we do a risky job quite safely. And so for me, it's the environment. Now, I'm not the macho type, quite frankly, you know, and it is perhaps in some cases it gets portrayed that way. But I mean, we're having women with passion in mining. So it's about the passion, and we make a real difference, eh?
Yeah.
You know, if it's not grown, then it's mined. And so we're on the mining part. I like the farmers as well. But as miners, without us, now that should not make us arrogant, and that should not make us complacent, and that should not make us not care. Yeah. We should care more than anybody else, because inherently our activities cause a potential disturbance. So, I mean, what a fantastic responsibility. On the one hand, you give the world what it needs, and on the other hand, you do it to the best of your ability, not hurting anybody, not doing permanent damage, or where you make an impact, make the smallest possible impact. It's an absolute, can we go in mine now?
Yeah, please. You're big on authentic leadership. Maybe talk to us about that a bit.
So, how embarrassing would it have been if I tried to sit here and be Nelson Mandela? You get my point.
Yeah.
So I read business books cynically, because often they are written. If you read the book on Elon Musk, what a hero. It's a pity he opens his mouth or tweets, and then you think perhaps not the complete hero. No.
Sure.
And I'm just using a real life example. Yeah. So authenticity means I can be the best version of me. What a second rate anybody else I would be. It can't be my calling. My calling can't be to be more like you. Yeah. My calling can but only be to be the best version of me. And listen, I don't score myself highly. Sure. I think I can do a hell of a lot better being the best version of me. But in my early days, when I was appointed, as you said, very young, I got put down and said, you're doing fine. We can see you know what you do at Harmony. But you had 2 pieces of advice.
Sure.
You know these performance review meetings. No, I don't believe in them. The 2 pieces of advice I got was you should go, for English classes, because the way you speak English. Now, I had enough English to tell them to go away in proper English, because I don't need to sound anything different in my mind. Yes, I speak English the way I do. And so, especially in South Africa, we all speak second language English. My accent, you can tell where I come from. I find it authentic, not a problem. My E's and R's are better than what they were 30 years ago, but geez, towards the end of the day, I run out of English and then I struggle. My second bit of advice was I should really get better suits.
Sure.
Now, how is that, any of that authentic?
Sure.
I don't particularly like suits. To be fair, I was young and they could fire me, so I got a few suits. But I never did anything on the English. Because if I sit here and I say, but she's a lady, therefore she can't be, then the problem's me, not you. Yeah. If I sit here and I say, but she's black, then the problem's me, not you. If you don't sound like me, and that offends me, the problem's me, not you. Sure. So surely authenticity is the real deal. Who are you? And that shouldn't give us complete freedom to be arrogant assholes.
Absolutely.
That shouldn't give us the freedom to say what we think. I'm not talking about that type of authenticity, but I'm talking about when people see the spikiness, the real you, they actually like it. Yeah. I have not ever thought people want you to be something that you aren't. The more real you are, the easier you make it for people to either like you or then decide for the right reasons they don't like you now.
Sure. You are the chairman of Joburg and Dava, and I just want you to talk to us a bit about that. A lot of collaborative work comes through that platform. Conversations that are relevant by the industry and for the industry. What was your core purpose in having that? And with the number of years it's been happening, have you seen what your goal was at the time manifesting itself today?
So in all the big things in my life, there's always a woman. When we talk about inspiration, there's a woman, my wife. When we talk about Joburg and Dava, there's a woman, our partner, Paula Mansi. She is a professional in the conferencing space. Yeah. She came back from London and she wanted to do a conference in the mining industry. She wanted it to be different. And what is different? Well, there's the big industry conference, the Cape Town Invest in Mining Conference, and it's a phenomenal financial success. But this was the time when Jacob Zuma was doing some significant damage to the fabric of our country. Sure. The mining industry was at war with itself and with the ministers deployed by the then ANC. And yet, none of these correct conversations took place. So it was a very easy thing to step into and say, why don't we have these conversations, but not in smoke-filled rooms, not quietly where we say, hint, hint, we saw the minister, publicly, in front of the journalists. And it took a bit of time. And as the CEOs learned that they could say things publicly, I think our mining CEOs could be applauded for the role they play by speaking their minds. Now, if you hate on them, you can say, yeah, of course they would say that, but they still sometimes say what they really believe and what is really in the interest of the country, or from their perspective at least. But of course, for it to be real, you must have the union leaders there, you must have the politicians there, you must have everybody there, and then you need somebody who's not scared to stir a bit of trouble.
That's you.
And I don't get paid, so I have to have my fun in other ways. And I honestly think, I think this year we may have had our 12th one.
Yeah.
It works phenomenally well. The environment is different. Now we have a GNU, we don't have a Zuma regime, and yet the topics are still relevant. We need to talk. I mean, the madness of the world, how does this impact on us as an industry? How do we respond? Why? I mean, at this Cape Town Indaba now, the one that we try to be different to, our Minister Gwede Mantashe said, you know, but surely we should actually, we're all on the same side.
Yeah.
And we are, as South Africans. It's going to be easy to get on the same side if Donald Trump keeps on abusing us. We're going to soon have a common enemy. And so I think that's worked extremely well. But it's a conversation, and conversations can only create awareness. Out of that has come a platinum day, because South Africa's platinum industry is actually world class, and the whole world depends on us. Obviously, as you know, we need to talk about coal. That was a difficult conversation, but it's morphed into coal and energy transition. You know, hydrogen is extremely hyped up, so we have a conversation about hydrogen and its role in the future. And then, of course, the junior small companies always feels left out. And so our junior Indaba is actually a fantastic, it's one of my favorites, because these are real people. Sometimes they're still family owned, sometimes they're still little businesses. And so we have this series of conversations. 2 years ago, we were bold enough to take this format to London to talk about Africa. You can't talk about Africa in Joburg. We have irritated our fellow Africans to the point that they think we're arrogant, correctly so perhaps. But in London, you can have a really good conversation about mining in Africa in a continental sort of context, and that has worked extremely well. So we have a number of these sort of conversations, and quite frankly, if you ask me, what is this about? To me, this feels like part of my giving back. An industry that after 45 years, I've had so much fun in. I'm enjoying this, but it's fantastic to see young people, old people, people from all the stakeholders having the conversations, just stopping short of bashing each other, because we're all passionate. I like that.
You're very big on finding common ground, and I think you just touched a bit on that. Would you say, with where the calls into South Africa is now around the just energy transition, would you say we found ourselves in terms of where the common ground is, and we sort of headed in the same direction? You
know, I think we are not there yet.
Sure.
And I came to realize that last year when we had a renewable energy conversation separate from coal mining conversations. And then the coal miners would talk about them, and then they would talk about them. Yes. Last year we actually formed it into one conversation. Sure. You know who were the people who were the most shocked? Were those Cape Town-based renewable energy experts who talk to themselves as if one more solar panel and we can shut down coal-fired panels. Now, I mean, to be realistic, there is no doubt that we need to generate a lot more energy, and it has to be green and greener. I mean, if that is my overriding, that's what I owe my grandchildren. Now, how we get there is not to be irresponsible in the short term. We cannot shut down Sasol. We will destroy our economy. Sure. And that's just from a chemicals and other byproduct. It is the core of our economy. I mean, the last bit of Iskor, or what is it called now, metal being shut down, damages the economy. Sasol will pull the heart out of our economy, and it's coal-based. And then, I mean, we actually almost begin to believe we've got an economy if Eskom can operate for 300 days without load shedding. Eskom cannot operate yet without coal. So to me, the moment we let go of our philosophical, I hate coal, I hate this, and we say, yes, what is our reality? Our reality is we built a very well, I mean, if we look back now, the economy we built was far from ideal, but we built it on cheap coal-fired power stations. The journey away from that is not overnight.
Sure.
They're allowing other people who sit in other circumstances to tell us, and they switch off their coal power, but they tap into Russian gas. We can't tap into Russian gas. So we have to just have a real conversation. Sure. In the end, South Africans will take decisions that suit South Africa, despite all the lobbying or whoever says what's from outside. I criticize our minister publicly, jokingly, as a coal dinosaur.
Yes.
But thank God we've got a minister who at least cares about mining.
Absolutely, yeah.
That helps. Should we be as coal dependent as he wants us to be? Well, I'm not a politician, that's for. But energy transition is not about the coal miner that may lose his job or the Madupi worker that may no longer have a job. It's actually about 62 million South Africans and what's the best for South Africa.
Absolutely. Bernard, reflecting back in your journey, what's that one thing you would think, I should have done that better?
Oh my gosh, how much time have we got?
And what's that one thing that you think, I've done this right, go now and do it?
Sure. No, I truly made many mistakes, and some of them are well published. Some of the ones that are published as my mistakes, I'm even proud of. But I have struggled to celebrate progress, even today. Yes, okay, so we had a good quarter. Guys, but that was done. Can we talk about what are we doing this quarter?
Yeah.
That's very dysfunctional leadership.
Yeah.
It's dysfunctional. I know when I teach leadership, one of the key principles is to celebrate progress.
Absolutely.
You must every day allow your team to feel like we made progress.
Sure.
I was a bit of an asshole with that. I was never quite happy enough to say, let's celebrate. Just t-shirt stuff and the braais and that stuff. In time, I matured to allow other people to force me to do it or to do it on my behalf. So I was not a good leader in terms of, but we are taking steps, but we are making progress. I was never satisfied, I suppose. And that really does damage to people. I mean, that means you're a hard taskmaster and you never say, but thank you for trying, or,
Yeah.
So that was, I honestly think you touched on it earlier, and it was not a me thing. It was an opportunity to be bold out of necessity. When your back is against the wall. That's why politicians love to declare states of emergency, because then suspend the rules, do what you want.
Yes.
I mean, when you are in a desperate situation where the company's existence depends on something changing, it becomes a bit easier to be bold. So I think boldness, which speaks to my core strength, which is I'm an activator. I will think later. I will let smart people do the thinking whilst I'm already acting.
Sure.
That played out, and I think to the extent that there were moments where I personally made a positive contribution, it was probably the boldness to initiate, But I must say, if you do that, if you live like that, then you also make spectacular mistakes.
Yeah, talking about your boldness, were you at some point referred to as a cowboy?
I'm sure, yeah. I mean, now I'm called a pot stirrer. That sounds like good English for a hooligan. I reflect with people who've stayed around, still are CEOs, and I don't think we ever deliberately set out to be cowboys. I think the environment was, for example, such that you could take big decisions without all the processes. So I think perhaps it was just in an environment where the governance rules were much more like, as the CEO, you could do almost anything. But that some people would refer to some of those decisions as wild, irresponsible cowboy. I would be surprised if that's not the case.
Yeah. Look, one thing that inspires me about your life, outside of the great strides you've made in your career, the accolades and the great positions you hold, is, your personal and family life. You've been married for 21 years. That's beautiful. And just putting that, together, maybe just share with us The importance of building that strong unit for yourself while building a great career that you've built for yourself.
Can I please preface it by saying, and it's my second marriage.
Sure.
So the first one of 19 years,
Yeah.
I messed up. It was not a success. And out of that came significant learning.
Sure.
I'm happily married for 21 years. I can
Sure.
even say that without fear of Tracy contradicting that. And we work hard on that, and we overlap, and we collaborate, and we do things together by design. I'm not saying that's the recipe for everybody. There are people who say, what? Me working with my wife? Then I say, I don't work with my wife, I work for my wife. And I'm she's my thinking partner, she's my biggest fan, I'm her biggest fan. And therefore, with our son, Zach, which is now 19-year-old, that core family has been an anchor in my life. But in everything in life, when we want to succeed, we set out to succeed, we have a plan, we work on it. In our private life, we want to be happy, but I'm a bit busy with work or a bit busy with this. How stupid are we? So, when you mess up and you reflect and you say, what part of the mess up was me? What do I need to change? My deliberateness to be successful as a husband, I mean, I'm a much better husband now than what I was first time around, unashamedly so. And I said to people, I don't know about work-life balance. Those things are all beautiful concepts. All I'm saying is if you don't work on a relationship, it can't get stronger.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, it doesn't deteriorate, but it's likely to be deteriorating. So surely spend time, do date night, find time, those holidays at the time when you think you are too busy or too important to be missed at work. All of those are the things that young people... But listen, your generation are better than my generation.
You reckon?
As boomers, we were not well raised. We didn't have good role models ourselves.
Yeah. Look, Bernard, you're well in your 60s. I mean, you've taught...
Hey, only 6. Yeah, well in my 60s, you're right.
I promise you, you've learned, you've taught, you've succeeded, you've failed, you've fallen and gotten up. What advice would you give to young professionals, particularly in different levels in the mining industry?
So I used to tell people to do what you love. Yes, see, in South Africa, that is an arrogant statement.
Sure.
Now, in South Africa, how lucky are you if you've got a job?
Privilege.
Absolutely. So that privilege advice is no longer what I give.
Yeah.
But I don't think, that was even true for me. I didn't pick mining as my first, choice. I wanted to be an industrial engineer. Fortunately, East Coast wouldn't give me a bursary. Long story. In the end, I found things I love in what I got to do. Now that is true. So when I was a night shift boss, I had to find things in there that I loved enough to do it properly. So that is much better advice I give now, is wherever you are in the mining industry as a professional, you have to find enough of what you love in what you do so that you do it well. Because if you don't stand out where you are now, what are you dependent on? What all these terminologies like, because you're a black woman, we will promote you. Because you're a white guy. No, you want to be promoted because you are the top best. And you have to be the best when you do your early blasting license. You have to do your best when you are an accountant, but you want to be the CEO. When you're a whatever foreman, you want to be the engineer. And that's not so hard. It's an attitude, and it's that curiosity that made you study your discipline in the first place. Find it in every day. Find a few things that you love in every day, and you will stand out.
Foresight, Bernard, what does the future of mining in your eyes look like for South Africa?
Fantastic, truly. We are endowed with natural resources.
Absolutely.
So it's been true for 4 billion years, whichever version of the world you believe in. We have mined for hundreds of years. We have formerly mined for 150 years. And so gold has peaked and is on the way down. Platinum may be at a peak, who knows? Coal we need a lot of for many years, but perhaps we never mine as much as we mined in the past. Manganese, we have 9% of the world's reserves. We don't mine that portion. And so we go on, and so we go on. And as we see now, the things that we mined in the past, we need less of, and things that the future needs, we need to mine. So I think mining is, it's going to be around forever, because quite honestly, if it's not mined, it needs to be grown. So having said all of that, of course, where you've got concentration ability, like in Europe or so, recycling will play a bigger part. Sure. All of that is true. However, will we be mining in South Africa in 100 years from now? Absolutely. Especially if we do not allow people to go and mine where there's no regulation. So I personally am very anti deep sea mining and things. I think often people want to go there where the inspectors can't follow them. I'm much more comfortable, let's mine where we can be controlled, where the damage we do can be mitigated. But hey, even if they go mine down there 5 kilometers deep or on Mars, we will be mining in South Africa. If I was 18, I would be studying mining engineering by choice this time.
Sure. Look, Bernard, thank you so much for sharing your insights and the work that you do to continue to shape our industry. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Bernard's leadership reminds us that success is built on courage, adaptability, and staying true to one's principles. I hope this conversation has inspired you to enhance your own leadership journey. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye, and God bless.